Hey, oh hi, happy Wednesday. Something that comes up almost in every conversation is the dysfunction of the current council. And so, one thing that people ask very often is, what's the first thing you want to do if you are elected? And the first thing I say is, we've got to get the council functioning with some efficiency and with some goodwill and trust. And before we get to these priorities, I think these are things we're going to have to do. So I'd like to offer some very specific things. All of these can be found on my website, but I'd like to go into a little bit of detail here, just to name a few things, not all of them. These specific things, I hope, can make a difference, building trust and goodwill, so that we have council people who really do want to work together for the good of our city. So one is, you've probably heard, we have the California Voting Rights Act that was imposed on the state. Nobody in the council wanted it. This just came up at the council meeting last night. And the voters, our Ojai voters, decided in 2022 in Measure M to leave the California Voting Rights Act as soon as the council deemed it should. I think that should be as soon as possible. So what I'd like to do next year is work with our city attorney and move us in a prudent way off of the California Voting Rights Act. And what that means is our districts would go away. So right now you currently can vote for a council person that lives in your district, and then the mayor is citywide. I'd like to change that whole system back to how it used to be, which is you have a certain number of council seats available, people run for it that live in the city, and the top vote getters, wherever they happen to live in the city, get those council seats. It gives the opportunity for a much wider group of people that get to run for those council seats. And then I think most importantly, it takes away the thought of mandate from the current mayor, and I think maybe the prior mayor, that they have some special authority because they came in citywide to enact the will of the voters. And I think that's been a mistake. I think that's caused a lot of ill will. One of those things is the mayor unilaterally putting things on the agenda. I've advised that I would always try to seek another council person's opinion about these matters, and I'd like to take away that power right away, and I promise that I won't do that. If there's an emergency like a Thomas fire, fine, we'll act in an emergency, but that has not been used in that way. So we would become more of a team, voted at large, and then the mayor would be rotated among the council people as it used to be. So the mayor is just a formal position, the person running the meetings. I think that's going to go a long way. I hope it gets enacted by whoever ends up being in the council. The second is an ethics guideline. Maybe it's a committee or a commission, but at least a guideline to have all of the city council people work in some collaborative way, and in a way that gives them some boundaries. What to do and say on social media, how to work with supporters, how to guide supporters who, let's say in their comments, are doing things that are divisive. What can we do as a community that doesn't tear each other apart? So an ethics guideline, I think, is absolutely necessary. I would like to do that in the first month. And that workshop could be a little longer, a public workshop, coming up with ethics guidelines for all the council people. It looks like there needs to be some more training in governance in general. I'd like to seek out some experts to help the council do that, to look at budgets more carefully, to look at ordinances maybe with the longer view. And then finally, in that same area, I would love to have a priority workshop similar to what our interim manager Mark Scott had done, where we set our priorities, general, big picture. These are the things we'd like to look at, or these are the lenses through which all of our activities should come through. Those would be things like, secure housing for our residents. It could be the right balance with tourism. It could be fiscal responsibility. How would that always work? It could be, how do we manage climate mitigation in all of our activities? How do we maintain our environment, and so on? This guideline workshop would set the stage, and I would love this, 5, 6, or 7 items to appear on every single agenda and say, this is our strategy. We're always trying to work towards this, and mostly all of the activities that we're involved in should somehow point to those strategies. So if someone wants to introduce something that is wildly awry from one of those strategies, I would want to ask that council person, which one of these strategies would you like to see this replace? And so I hope that could curtail and bring in our activities focused on something that could be more long-term. So I hope that would help. We had an issue, some of you will recall, that a council person felt that what was being done in a closed session was a violation of the Brown Act. That council person reported it to the Ojai Valley News in addition to the district attorney. The district attorney affirmed that there was a Brown Act violation and also affirmed that the council person should have gone to the district attorney first. But that district attorney recommended that the closed sessions be recorded. Now, the judge in the case affirmed, validated the case that there was a Brown Act violation. The plaintiff in the case has, gone to appeal. We'll see what that yields. I see no reason to not record the closed sessions. Now, if you don't know, the closed sessions are for a couple of specific things, but most importantly, personnel issues and litigation. It could be, property issues. So they aren't publicly distributed. They would only come up in a case like this where you could say what literally happened, not hearsay or he said, she said kind of notion. I think we've really missed the boat on that, and I see no reason not to do it. And when we have current council people or candidates talk about the desire for transparency and the desire for clarity, why would you not record that? I'm slightly baffled by it. So I think we should be doing that right away. Additionally, related to this, when there are lawsuits, I would also like to see the legal cost be published and have that be part of the agenda so that we see at each meeting how much are we spending on a case, so that the public can absolutely know here's what this litigation is costing us that we're either fighting or maybe there's a special interest wanting to change something about the council. I think that should be public and everybody should know what the activity is. A couple of other procedural things I would like to explore. I'm going to have to work with staff on this, and I do want their feedback very much because the burden is on them in this way, so I do want to defer to them. I would prefer to meet every Tuesday instead of every other Tuesday and have the meetings be shorter. I think that solves a few things. One is I think we can have better decision making. Secondly, that if we feel some urgency to make a decision because something needs to happen before 2 weeks, it gives us a more timely way to respond to issues. And I'd like to see the agendas published more in advance than they are now so that the newspaper can publish the agendas. It gives people time to digest what's there instead of just the few days before. Again, transparency and public involvement would be those main things. Further, when we have an issue that we know there's going to be a lot of public interest in, I would like to have a separate workshop, which does sometimes happen now, on a weekend day, let's say, and give people more time to talk. So, give people 5 minutes instead of 3 so they can express themselves well. And then at that meeting, no decision is made. So this is the opportunity for the council to hear from the public, and then at the next council meeting, they deliberate and then make the decision. I think it lets the council have more time to digest what has been said, and then not to have the public comment already again at the council meeting, but just you've had the workshop, now let's have this council time. And again, I would love to have, this is kind of a main point, I think. The council right now, it appears, for the most part, they seem to know how they're going to vote when they walk in. And that's natural. But what I would love to see more is some give and take. So that means changing the decorum and the form a little. So if a council person brings up a point, I would love to be able to say, oh, council person, help me understand where you're coming from. Let me ask you these questions. It does happen a little now. I'd like to see it happen more where we feel we're trying to come to the best decision together, and it's through these differing points of views and asking questions and explaining ourselves that the best can emerge. That often doesn't happen now, and you'll see examples where somebody will pull out a pre-written statement sort of at the end of the deliberation outlining their position, and you think, why did we have the deliberation at all? Why not just read that and vote and save the time? So I'd like to have a real conversation there if we can do it. So I'm hoping that with ethics, with lively debate and lively conversation, and I hope over time, the real expression of goodwill and trust that permeates what we do, and finally we do want to serve and we want to do what's best for our city. And the best way to do that is by trusting each other, believing each other does have goodwill for all of us, and working together. There's many other things on the website. There's a valley-wide committee I would like to have. I'd like to move away from a mayor's youth council and have it be an Ojai youth council that all the council people are involved in. There's many, many things. These would be the main ones that I hope we can then, hopefully soon, after maybe a month or so, be able to move then to our larger agenda, revived, refreshed, with some renewed trust. So again, you might ask, if you're happy with the way things are, then just proceed the way it is. If you're not happy, then I think we need a real change. And I think we need a change that's going to be very specific. What is the outline and the plan so that we can have more transparency, we can have more cooperation, and I would say more lively and authentic deliberation. I think that can make a big difference. And again, more community involvement, the better. So I hope that helps. That'll be the first things I'll be working on, and I hope that carries us through that 2-year term in a very positive way. Thanks for listening.